Good afternoon. It's Joyful Hermit. Going to get the sound on here correct. Um, there have been some very interesting comments lately, and other people have written just in general, people that I've known over the years. And I don't generally do correspondence. I can't spread myself too thin. So I'm really focusing on the video, on giving responses to the videos. And I also um, want to give more preparation to these. Like, for example, today is the day that Julian of Norwich is celebrated. And she lived in the 14th century in England, and over time really became one of the most noted mystics of England. Um, she had an illness that went on, and during this illness she had visions. She was an older woman, and she became a what's called an anchorite. That's what they were called back in that time period. Hermits took on the name of anchorite, where they would live in a cell or a little room attached to the side of a church with a window into the church by which they could receive communion and look at Mass, watch um, the Mass, or hear it. And there was a window then out to the world where a maidservant or something would put food through the window for the anchoress or anchorite, male or female, to anchoress female and anchorite male, could receive food, and also herbs or anything if they had illnesses. There wasn't even a door into. Now, I'm sure in an emergency they would crawl through the window, but the windows were really very small. But also, people would come to that window. Usually, the anchoress or the spiritual director of the anchoress or anchorite would say only so many hours a day, because St. Colette, who was an anchoress during that time period, or a little bit later, a little bit after Julian, but she actually was inundated with people, and she was losing prayer time and becoming frazzled just trying to meet the needs of all these people who wanted her advice and her prayers. So he said just only, I think it was like 1 to 3 in the afternoon or something, 2 hours in the afternoon. And in the morning, then she had two rooms. She had a room adjoining where she had a maidservant, and I think there was a door leading to, but the maidservant wouldn't go in to Julian's or to Colette's cell, her room, unless she was ill or some major need. Um, but she kept the place up and did the shopping of foods, groceries, fruits and vegetables. And she didn't, usually they don't eat much. And it's not, these mystics and others, holy people, it's not that they don't eat much because they know that that's a sign of holiness or they're detaching from food, because they don't. The thing is with detachment, it's not that you are working at giving up clothing or giving up attachment to food and eating this and that. It's that you are loving God so much and becoming so focused on God and on prayer, which is your relationship with God is prayer. Without prayer, there isn't a relationship. Prayer is the communication, and that communication can be wordless. In fact, is very blessed when it's wordless. It can be thought, it can be feeling, it can be outer utterances, it can be doing actions that communicates to God your love. Like I'm going to go out and plant some replacement trees that I got this morning, and that is going to be an action of my love for God the Creator. So that will be prayer. That will be my communication of oh, I just love trees and plants. And that will be my pleasure in God, the Creator, my joy and gratitude for all the unusual trees and flowers and I have little tiny miniature conifers, little evergreens, little tiny things that grow maybe a half an inch in a couple of years or something. They're very small, tiny little cones. Cones are actually blooms. They are blooms of a evergreen tree. So see all of that, and then human beings participate with God in developing these different cultivars, and they can be fairly pricey. And you think, but there no one that develops cultivars is ever wealthy because while the prices may seem expensive to people who don't value or appreciate the years it takes to develop a new strain of something, a new cultivar. And these people do it because they love trees. They love cooperating with God in creating a variation. Or in foodstuffs, they are improving upon quality and nutrition. But it takes years. So that's why sometimes trees can cost, these unusual, beautiful specimens can cost. And I bought a couple. The neighbor could, I thought, well, she could choose, but now I think, no, I'll just tell her take one for your birthday and one for Christmas because she helps me a lot. Or I might ask her, would you prefer money? But she doesn't go out, and she's married. Sometimes married people, they don't have the freedom, or they don't feel they do, to purchase something like a tree. She has admired a little teeny one of mine, not mine, God's. It's here on the property that I planted last year. Cute little thing. She just loves it. Well, they didn't have that exact this year, but they had something similar, and I know she'll like it. But she won't go and do that of her own. They, as a couple, go out to dinner with friends or with other people, people from their church. They happen to be LDS, and so they have a lot of people interactions with their church people. And that's how they spend their money, which is lovely because they're an older couple, and a lot of the people are younger people. They encourage them, probably talk over family things to give them advice and such as that, or just to enjoy one another's company because they're not hermits. They're not to be focused like we are, and they don't have the suffering. The husband has some, but that isn't like a primary force in their life. A vocation of suffering is not theirs. So it's very lovely. And I realized she wouldn't go, and she might not feel like she should spend money on trees. Her husband maybe wouldn't understand or go along with it. Maybe he'd say, no, we should be doing it, taking some young couple out to dinner, which is it's an act of charity. Or meet them for dinner. That's what a lot of normal people do. I've been so disabled so many years that sitting is hard that I'm out of sync. But with the normal social activities that can be very loving and wonderful. So it's even looking at these trees, and it just reminds me of God. And her husband, on the weekend, Mother's Day, well, yes, just yesterday, she came over and said, my husband has been talking today about just how beautiful the trees are that you planted along the boundaries. I have plantings to help screen. We can still see each other easily, but there's all this beauty of unusual different Japanese maples and other acers. Acers are types of maple trees. One's called Eskimo Sunset, and the woman particularly likes that. the upper part of the leaf is sort of a greenish pink speckled with white cream, and underneath is like a maroon color. So when the wind or the breezes, you see this reverse going on. It's just amazing to see God's beauty and color and light flowing and breeze blowing, and then there's different conifers. So in the wintertime they also have something to look at. So when we plant things like that, it's not just for us. We're looking out and seeing, but we don't realize other people on either side or behind are looking and enjoying also. And hopefully it lifts them up like it did this husband. He's been an artist. He was a potter, sculptor, or worked with pottery, mostly pottery. And so he saw those and appreciated it. So I don't know. He might say, no, go get some. But I think they're active, physically more active, and they spend their energies with people, corporate works of mercy with people. I spend corporal works of mercy with God's trees. And I appreciate that the botanists, I'm sure the arborists and things that have developed these over years it takes to develop a new cultivar. And I love the unique. And so I found some. I call them onesies, one-offs today. Only one like it there. And well, all three are ones I had not heard of. New cultivars are relatively new or rare, and then I name those. I have those are they all have somebody connected with it to be praying for. So anyway, there's Julian Norwich was an anchorite and had these visions of Jesus when she was ill. Wrote them down shortly after. And then later on in life, as she got older and closer to, her time was coming, as it is for all of us as we get older, she reviewed it and wrote out more what it meant to her, what the visions meant. And so she's just a very instrumental, beautiful person, and the first woman to write in England who had a book that was written by a woman in England. She's the first female author. So, and it was published after she died, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, very interesting how she lived in solitude, but yet all these people would come to her for advice. And she had to balance her time also, how much time she could spend. Otherwise, we get spread too thin and we wear out more. And then the quality of what we say is based on our connection with God, with the Holy Spirit, with Jesus, and with God the Father. So if we are expending energy on always talking to others and helping them with ideas or their spiritual lives or answering questions, we lose the base from which the chalice is filled. If we consider our souls as chalices, that they're filled by the Trinity. And if we are spilling it out and we don't have the time, we don't take the time to let it fill up again, then that can be a problem. So I think that's why hermits and anchorites, and like Julian, and wisely Colette, St. Colette's uncle was actually her spiritual director and her guardian. Her parents had died, and he told her, too much, you've got to cut back and only have a couple of hours. But they had people around, they had their own support network, but yet they were solitaries. But other people have written in the comments to these videos different things, especially one everyone touches my heart. What you write does, even if it gets into the topic that I really have to not have in the not leave in the comments. They're there for a couple of days while I pray about it and respond and share my views or my take on it, or just get the input or give advice, even though it's not necessarily asked. Sometimes I assume, and assuming can be a bad thing. Sometimes I assume that the person is sincerely just expressing and that they haven't made up their mind yet and they're sort of confused. But then as it goes on, I can usually discern if they are really entrenched in their path, their religious path and beliefs, and or who they're following. If it's an online guru or somebody who writes books, and what their bent is, what their angle is, or their if they're spiritualists or New Age or whatever like that, or if they're Christian or some other belief or religion, or like Buddhism, philosophy, fine. But if they start to, if it's anything sort of a little sneaky about it, that eventually will pop up. Like if they really sort of have an agenda and want to get me involved, or sort of authenticating or approving and interested myself in it, or in agreement with them. See, some topics, since I was warned, I just cannot do. And the warning was severe enough that, at least for me, I know God does not want certain things. But other comments then are people responding to something I have mentioned. And another comment that, and I appreciate all of them. I just, in the previous video, I explained that about how sometimes I have to draw a line, have boundaries for what's left up for other people to read. Because I can't encourage something, obviously, that God was very adamant about with me. So, if that makes sense, I just can't risk it. So, but the other comment that recently was somebody who felt very, very alone, suffers, is disabled, not well, and had always sort of thought, well, if she only had had a husband or children even, that would be better, be easier. But then after listening to me, she realized, well, there's no guarantees with that either. There's no, if we're hermits, if we're called to suffering and we're disabled, there is this disability responsibility, and it's on us. And it struck me too when she wrote that I have thought, like my neighbor with her husband, there's two people doing everything, maintenance, taxes, or of course they have much better income. They both worked. They reared their children. Their children are all gone, are all on their own, but all very close with the parents. The family's all close. It's ideal. It's wonderful. They had a normal family life growing up, and supportive. They had income, so there was stability, and neither of them are mystics or anything like that that's different, or that the children would perceive their parents as being different. So it was a very balanced, normal peaceful upbringing. Nothing different or nothing strange. And I thought, oh, here I am doing all these different things. But when this viewer wrote, and she had the same feelings about, well, just to have children, how wonderful that would be to have anyone care about you and to help you out and to, no, my neighbor takes me to some of these appointments. I don't have, well, the person in this area, she works anyway, long hours, odd hours. One time she had a couple times she had a friend. One time she had a friend pick me up from a surgery, and because she couldn't, she was out of town or something. Oh no, her husband had COVID. That was that time, but so that got me to thinking though about this woman's life, this viewer's life, of no one, not even children on rare occasion, who would be for her. But then, Mother's Day came and went, and I did have one phone call, unexpected, from one of my children. Not the son, but the eldest daughter called. Wasn't expecting that at all. And it was just so special. I was so grateful. And, but, that I haven't, well, I guess I saw her. I haven't seen the grandchildren in over 4 years, or the son-in-law, and probably won't. So we can start feeling like that we're alone, and it's painful. Our expectations. We develop these expectations, even though we have a vocation of suffering. We're disabled, or we have a religious vocation like Hermit. These little expectations just start trickling in, and like this viewer said also, it's the dreams that mess her up. It's the dreams that mess with her mind and her emotions. These dreams of what if she'd had a husband, what if she had children, wouldn't that feel better to have a support network, someone close who really cares about you. But then after my video, she realized, well, that doesn't necessarily happen. They grow up, they move on, or they've overdone helping and supporting a disabled parent, and psychologically are at a point where they just can't. Just the thought or sight of the parent can trigger them into bad memories of how hard it was for them. Everyone has his or her perspective. And we do have our dreams. And I thought, that dream thing, that messes with me too. Dreams of what I could have done with my life, for God even. More active things for God. What I could have done even if I weren't so religious or mystic, born this way. And I tried my best, to be out in the world, and God directly told me, no, you won't be healed. You will be too easily called back out into the world. God didn't want me out in the world because I get distracted. There would have been any number of careers I would have loved, just even working in a nursery, a greenhouse, or owning one, or being a developer of cultivars, or a physical therapist, just any number of things I would have done. And a psychologist, clinical therapist, that's what would have been really a shoo-in for me, Dr. H thought, when I then tried to get that career going. But my pain interfered with it. God didn't want that. But all our dreams, and then when we start thinking about these dreams that were lost, foiled, taken away by a drunk kid in my life, dreams of the family, and a husband and wife, and well, he probably would have left anyway at some point, and it was best he did. God didn't want that for me. So we forget that we need to be asking God, what is God's dream for me? God, what is your dream for me? And help me fulfill your dream, the dream God has for me. And for me, myself personally, it's living my hermit life and loving God above all things and loving others as God loves, and loving others as myself, as God loves me. And just keep going, just keeping going. Run the errands. I had to go to Home Depot. I got a wonderful refund. I had 3 items that I had purchased for this to work on this house, and then I got ill and they got all stuffed away, and found out the sinks were way too small, really not utilizable for a master bathroom. But it was way past the time that I could return. But the manager said, I'd been such a good customer, and that's a technique. I zero in on one store. I get to know where everything is in the store through time and needing different things for renovating a house. I get to know the clerks, and especially the ones that are very good. Like there's 2 clerks that do the windows, and one is really older man, very experienced. So he's the one that I went to get the windows and the doors, to order those, and because he could figure everything out well and advise me, and had a lot of experience. And a man in plumbing who's excellent. And when he's there, it's extra special, or sometimes I call to see if he's there because he teaches me things that I don't know. I'm going to do a little landscaping system to line drip to these different planter pots that I have blueberry bushes in, and a gooseberry and tomato plants, and I'll have other vegetables I'm growing in these planters that I already had. So, and then when I use their promotions so that I'm not using up my money all at once. I can keep it getting a little interest, but you have to make sure you make your payments on time, your minimum payment, and when it comes for the payoffs, gotta have that money there to pay it off. Well, I found these items, and another was like a heat pump for the tub. Well, I didn't have a jet tub, so that wasn't going to work, the electrician recently. But I was way past the deadline, and the manager said, "You've been such a good customer that I'll work it out to give you refunds on these things." And he says, "Also, you've been ill. You haven't been in. We haven't seen you in a long time." And I said, "Yes, I've been very ill with different ailments happening, and my knee surgery didn't work out last summer. So I was out for months with that. Wasn't really walking on it. Definitely not doing any work on the house then." So they gave me this refund, worked it out. Well, the manager who told me he ended up leaving midstream there, so to speak, and because I was to come back the next week, and he would work it out, bring the items, and he would work it out. But this other manager then, "Oh no, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you." So I have this in-store credit now. Just it's so kind. People can be so kind. And we forget how all these other people, strangers, and like people, I was waiting in line at the greenhouse and also at the Home Depot, and I had taken the dogs into Home Depot with me. They can go in, but they hadn't gone in for a long time because Lovey likes to stand up and hug people and just can't have that. He's a big guy. So I took him in, and people, of course, who love dogs gravitate to them. And there's always a pleasant interchange. positive, loving. Um, on occasion, somebody is upset if Lovey happens to lick a bare ankle or something. They don't like dogs, and I don't blame them. Oh, he's a slobbery dog. He's very orally fixated, Lovey is. But so that it just all these experiences with people, it reminds us that we aren't alone when we think we are. But when we get stuck on our dream for ourselves, our expectations, that's when we run into big trouble, and the devil knows it. Who's putting these dreams in our minds? Who's getting us feeling sorry for ourselves, or lonely, or feeling like, what will I do if something happens? Who's going to help me? Well, these neighbors, that's just been miraculous that the neighbor woman has been so kind. They moved in not quite 2 years ago, but it was last year that she knew I was going to have surgery, and she saw no one here. She saw activity here right after, and then no one. And she came over and thought, well, what's going on? Found that I was in this room, in this bed, alone. She says, well, how are you going to eat? Well, I don't know. She stepped right in and took care of me for 6 weeks. Brought food over, or got food for me, errands, got my medications, and I paid her. And not that much, but she was thrilled with the amount. And I mean, it was plenty for me, but she would come over 5 times a day, or 4 times at least, to change the ice in the ice pump to keep the swelling down. I couldn't do any of that, especially when it ended up being something wrong with it. It was extra painful and extra awful. So God works things out. But see, that wasn't my plan. I was feeling terrible that my family wasn't doing it. And we get these expectations. And other people also, because she thought it was horrible. How could they leave you like this? I said, well, the one had to go to work. She works. And then she's off doing these tournaments. During summer especially, there's more of them. And she's single parent now. That's her income. She can't just take off work. She doesn't have choices like that. So it all worked out. But I was just thinking again, though, with this site and the people leaving the comments, and I hope the ones that I had to remove some comments. And I also, I was tired, but I also was more stern about it in a response to the person. Because the person was making some assumptions about my health and about that I'm, a little bit put down. I'll have to say a little bit, because sometimes we can think that we are very enlightened. We are enlightened, and all these other people don't get it, and they're not ready to yet. Say, if somebody's New Age or Gnostic, and they're convinced because someone online said that Jesus talked with them and explained that the Bible, as it is inaccurate, and that Jesus was being portrayed incorrectly in the Bible. Jesus was telling this person online that, and also somebody who wrote books about what Jesus told that person. So, and this person who was writing in said, that at first he acted confused, but no, ended up really he believes that. He's convinced of that, and that he knows it, but was hoping that I would, I suppose, convert to that way of thinking. and agree. But no, because God talked to me. So I was trying to get that person to ask God himself. I think we all ought to ask Jesus ourselves if we have questions. Why take some stranger online who's saying that Jesus at length talked to him and told him how the scriptures are wrong? Oh my gosh. Ah, oh, oh my. Oh, I've got terrible pain. I gotta stop. Okay, just bad pain, my leg. Ask God yourself. And my main point that I go on and on without saying is we must understand we have each other. Even though we're anonymous, we're all over the world, we have each other. I gotta see what's going on. I don't know, maybe a wasp even climbed up my pants, but it's or some kind of a really bad cramp. So thank you. Talk to you later. Remember that. Ask Jesus yourself for answers if you get confused. And then discern. We shouldn't take, especially from contemporaries. We can get advice from people who've been tried and tested for hundreds of years. And all the scholars agree and all that. But we just shouldn't take someone online's word. You don't take my word for things. You find out yourself. Especially if something that I would say or somebody else isn't resonating right, doesn't click with you. And don't let yourself be put down. And get on top of our dreams. Ask God, what is your dream for me, God? What is your dream for me? So, okay. And then let's live God's dream for us. Talk to you later. This is one way God was cutting my video short, which needed to happen. Bye.